Time travel wasn't just a gimmick in the 1960s and 70s. It was a dangerous experiment that could shatter your mind. These weren't safe popcorn rides. They were bold, messy, and unforgettable visions of futures we feared, pasts we couldn't escape, and paradoxes we barely understood. What if you looked too far ahead or too far behind? Tonight, we're diving into 15 American time travel films that bent reality, twisted cinema, and still leave us asking, what if they were right? The Time Travelers. 1964. Some experiments should never be tested. In The Time Travelers, a group of scientists create a screen that lets them glimpse the future. At first, it's innocent, just an observation window into the year 2071. But curiosity proves fatal. They don't just watch, they step through. On the other side, they find a bleak world where humanity is on the brink of extinction, battling mutants while clinging to scraps of civilization. Directed by Ib Melchior on a minuscule budget, the film looks like classic drive-in fodder, cardboard sets, clunky dialogue, even rubber-faced monsters. Yet its ambition hits harder than its limitations. What terrified audiences wasn't the visuals, it was the concept. The scientists, desperate to escape, attempt to return to their own time, only to find themselves trapped in a devastating time loop. Their lives repeat endlessly, every mistake eternally replayed. For a 1960s sci-fi B-movie, this was a daringly bleak ending, suggesting technology didn't guarantee salvation, it could just as easily trap us. When Mystery Science Theater 3000 lampooned the movie decades later, they couldn't erase that chilling final image, humanity stuck forever in its own failed experiment. In a decade when optimism about the space race filled headlines, the Time Travelers whispered the opposite message. Maybe the future wasn't progress, it was a dead end. Robinson Crusoe on Mars, 1964. On paper, Robinson Crusoe on Mars sounds like pulp. An astronaut stranded on the red planet, alone, fighting to survive. But look closer, and it's a haunting exploration of how time bends when you're isolated from everything familiar. Paul Manty plays Commander Christopher Draper, marooned after a disastrous spaceflight. With only his wits, and briefly, a monkey, for company, he measures existence not by calendars, but by the agonizing stretch of each hour. Director Byron Haskin, already famous for War of the Worlds, turned Death Valley into a convincing Martian landscape. The result is a film both surreal and suffocating, where silence dominates and survival depends on inventiveness. Later, Draper discovers alien slavers and befriends a fugitive, but the heart of the movie remains his battle against time itself. His oxygen dwindles, his food runs out, every second counts, yet every day drags on like eternity. Audiences expecting a rocket adventure were instead confronted with an eerie meditation on loneliness. Critics dismissed it as slow, but modern viewers see the foresight. Long before The Martian, it imagined how space travel wouldn't just test science, it would test sanity. Time in Robinson Crusoe on Mars isn't linear, it's psychological torture. The Yesterday Machine, 1965. It looks like a forgotten drive-in relic, but The Yesterday Machine holds an audacious premise. What if Nazis built a time machine to rewrite history? Shot in Texas on a shoestring budget by director Russ Marker, the film follows two college students and a detective who stumble into a bizarre conspiracy. They're pulled into a device that whisks them back to the Third Reich's darkest days, where the past refuses to stay buried. The film's production values are laughable, wobbly sets, amateur acting, and grainy black and white cinematography. But beneath the flaws lies something chilling. Unlike other time travel adventures of its day, The Yesterday Machine suggested history could be weaponized. Fascism wasn't just defeated, it could return through manipulation of time itself. In the middle of the Cold War, that idea felt disturbingly plausible. For decades, the film was nearly impossible to find, circulating only through bootlegs and midnight screenings. Restorations later revealed its unsettling atmosphere, even if the execution was clumsy. It may lack polish, but it compensates with raw nerve. By making Nazis the masters of time, it asked one of the most terrifying questions of all: what if evil never really ends? In that sense, The Yesterday Machine remains more than a curiosity. It's a warning. Journey to the Far Side of the Sun, 1969. Imagine discovering a second Earth, an exact duplicate, hiding just behind the sun. That's the unsettling premise of Journey to the Far Side of the Sun, released in America in 1969, originally titled Doppelganger. Produced by Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, better known for Thunderbirds and UFO, this film was their bold attempt at serious science fiction, and the result was one of the strangest mirror world fantasies of its decade. Two astronauts are sent on a mission to explore the mysterious planet. Their journey ends in disaster. One is killed, the other awakens in what appears to be Earth, only to discover everything is reversed. Writing is backwards, technology malfunctions, even the natural laws feel unstable. It's a concept that bent audiences' minds in ways few sci-fi films dared at the time. Instead of presenting exploration as triumph, it suggested there are realms humanity was never meant to cross. The film's visual effects were stunning for their day, rivaling bigger-budget American productions. Miniatures, spacecraft, and futuristic sets created a world that felt tangible and unnervingly close to reality. But the ending sealed its cult reputation. Instead of escape or victory, the surviving astronaut dies in a horrific crash, leaving viewers with the haunting sense that some discoveries only bring ruin. Critics were divided, too bleak for mainstream audiences, too cerebral for drive-in crowds. Yet today, Journey to the Far Side of the Sun stands as a hidden gem of Cold War-era science fiction, reflecting the paranoia of the late 1960s. Space wasn't just an adventure. It was a dangerous mirror, and staring into it meant facing something you might not survive. Escape from the Planet of the Apes, 1971. By 1971, audiences thought they knew what to expect from the Planet of the Apes franchise: dystopian futures, apocalyptic landscapes, and humans subjugated by intelligent apes. But Escape from the Planet of the Apes flipped the formula upside down. Instead of continuing the story forward, it threw its characters backward in time. Cornelius and Zira, survivors of Earth's destruction, crash land in 1970s Los Angeles. Suddenly, the roles are reversed. At first, the film plays almost like a comedy. The apes are treated as celebrities, attending press conferences, drinking wine, and becoming cultural novelties. Their wit and charm make them media darlings. But soon, the mood darkens. Government officials begin to fear the apes' knowledge of Earth's future. What was once curiosity turns into paranoia, and paranoia into violence. The narrative twists into tragedy as the apes are hunted, leaving audiences reeling with an ending as brutal as it was inevitable. What made Escape so powerful wasn't just its surprise premise, it was how it mirrored contemporary America. Released at the height of Cold War distrust, Vietnam War disillusionment, and growing fear of surveillance, it used science fiction to explore paranoia about outsiders and the dangers of unchecked authority. Unlike many sequels, which limp along recycling the same beats, Escape dared to reinvent itself and leave audiences questioning humanity's own capacity for cruelty. In just one film, time travel turned a pulp series into a moral allegory. It didn't just continue the saga, it made it timeless. Slaughterhouse-Five, 1972. How do you adapt a novel that denies the very idea of time? George Roy Hill tried in 1972 with Slaughterhouse-Five, bringing Kurt Vonnegut's surreal masterpiece to the screen. The result was a disorienting, audacious film that became one of the decade's most haunting explorations of time. The story follows Billy Pilgrim, a man unstuck in time. Without warning, he drifts between his mundane life in suburban America, his harrowing captivity as a prisoner during the firebombing of Dresden, and his bizarre experiences on the alien world of Tralfamadore. Past, present, and future don't flow in sequence. They coexist, folding and crashing into one another. Hill mirrored this fragmentation in the film's structure, blending scenes with no clear transition, immersing the viewer in Billy's helpless drift. Michael Sachs plays Pilgrim with vacant detachment, a man at once victim and witness to life's absurdity. The war scenes are brutal, the alien abductions strange, the domestic moments eerily empty, all equal in their inevitability. Vonnegut's famous refrain, "So it goes," hangs over every sequence, stripping time of meaning and suggesting that fate cannot be changed. Released during the Vietnam War, the film resonated as an anti-war statement, a reminder of the futility of conflict and the impossibility of moving beyond trauma. While some audiences found it baffling, others hailed it as groundbreaking. It wasn't meant to comfort, it was meant to unsettle. Slaughterhouse-Five remains one of the rare films that captures not just a story, but a philosophy. In its world, time isn't a gift or a curse. It's simply a trap we can't escape. The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. At first glance, The Man Who Fell to Earth doesn't look like a time travel movie. But watch closely, and you'll see it's really about time itself, how humans squander it, and how an alien perceives it. Directed by Nicholas Roeg and starring David Bowie in his first major film role, it's one of the most disorienting science fiction visions of the 1970s. Bowie plays Thomas Jerome Newton, a humanoid alien who comes to Earth seeking water for his drought-stricken planet. His advanced knowledge allows him to build a tech empire, but he becomes trapped in the very human vices of greed, addiction, and lust. Roeg shoots the film in fragmented, non-linear sequences, reflecting Newton's alien perception of time. Moments from the past, present, and future blur together until the audience feels just as unstuck as he does. What truly makes the film haunting is Bowie's presence. He wasn't just playing an alien, he was one, at least in the public's imagination. With his gaunt frame and unearthly charisma, he turned Newton into a tragic symbol, a timeless being undone by human weakness. By the end, Newton is left stranded, powerless to save his people, trapped in the slow decay of time on Earth. Audiences in 1976 didn't know what to make of it. Some walked out, scandalized by its nudity and bleakness. Others hailed it as a psychedelic masterpiece. Today, it's seen as one of the most daring meditations on alienation ever filmed. In Newton's tragedy, we glimpse our own. Time is fleeting, and no matter how advanced we are, we're all prisoners to its relentless march. A Boy and His Dog, 1975. The future never looked so bleak or so darkly funny. In A Boy and His Dog, released in 1975, America had already absorbed Vietnam, Watergate, and the nuclear paranoia of the Cold War. L.Q. Jones's adaptation of Harlan Ellison's novella channeled all that despair into a savage vision of the world after time has ended. Don Johnson stars as Vic, a teenage scavenger roaming a wasteland with his telepathic dog, Blood. Their relationship is crude, brutal, and oddly tender, equal parts survival pact and dark comedy routine. Time here isn't measured in hours or days, but in food, water, and survival. Civilization is gone, and history means nothing. In its place is an endless present where morality has collapsed. Then comes the shocking twist, an underground society clinging to the illusion of the 1950s, complete with marching bands, artificial civility, and a grotesque insistence that time hasn't moved forward. But this paradise is rotten, a parody of nostalgia that traps Vic in its hypocrisy. The movie's final moments, still controversial today, leave audiences stunned at the price of survival. Critics were divided. Some called it misogynistic, others praised its uncompromising honesty, but fans embraced it as one of the decade's most daring cult films. What made A Boy and His Dog unforgettable wasn't just its brutality, it was its bold statement that time, once broken, can never be repaired. In a way, the film wasn't about the future at all. It was about how quickly humanity could erase everything it thought permanent. Idaho Transfer, 1973. Few films of the 1970s captured the paranoia of their era like Idaho Transfer. Directed by Peter Fonda, it was a haunting, low-budget time travel story that looked less like Hollywood spectacle and more like a warning whispered across decades. Shot in barren Oregon landscapes, it told the story of young scientists who discover a method of transporting themselves into the future. What they find there is devastating, a near-empty Earth, stripped of humanity and hope. Unlike most sci-fi of its time, Idaho Transfer didn't rely on special effects. Its terror came from stillness, the desolate highways, the empty plains, the eerie silence of a world already dead. The film suggested that environmental collapse, not nuclear war, might be the true enemy of mankind. By focusing on youth as the travelers, it sharpened the message. The future belongs to the young, but what if that future is already doomed? Critics were puzzled, audiences were small, but those who saw it never forgot it. Its minimalist style, almost documentary-like, gave it an authenticity missing from flashier productions. The ending, shocking in its quiet finality, left viewers shaken. For years, the film was nearly impossible to find, circulating in battered prints and whispered conversations. Recently, restorations have brought it back, revealing just how ahead of its time it really was. Idaho Transfer wasn't interested in paradoxes or adventure. Its vision of time travel was colder, harsher, a glimpse into what comes after humanity fails. In a decade obsessed with survival, it dared to ask a question no one wanted answered. What if the future isn't waiting for us at all? The Time Machine, 1960. George Powell's The Time Machine wasn't the first adaptation of H.G. Wells' famous novel, but it became the most iconic. Released in 1960, it starred Rod Taylor as the Victorian inventor who builds a machine capable of carrying him across centuries. Unlike other films of its time, it visualized the passage of years in dazzling sequences, shop windows changing, fashions shifting, wars raging, all while the traveler sits motionless in his contraption. But it's when he propels himself into the distant future that the film truly unsettles. Humanity has split into two species, the gentle, childlike Eloi and the monstrous, subterranean Morlocks. The Eloi live in blissful ignorance, while the Morlocks prey upon them, feeding on human complacency. For Cold War audiences, this vision was chilling, a metaphor for the dangers of unchecked division and technological dependence. The film's design was spectacular for its day, earning an Academy Award for special effects. George Powell's miniature work and the unforgettable spinning time-lapse sequences gave weight to Wells's ideas. Rod Taylor brought rugged conviction to the role, making his time traveler less a dreamer and more a desperate man searching for meaning. Over the decades, The Time Machine has endured as both a thrilling adventure and a cautionary tale. Its vision of the far future, where human progress collapses into savagery, feels no less relevant now. At heart, it reminds us that time travel isn't just about escape. It's about confronting the futures we may not want to see. Journey to the Center of Time, 1967. Drive-in audiences of the 1960s were treated to a lot of quick turnaround sci-fi, but Journey to the Center of Time stood out for one reason. It dared to send its characters not just forward or backward, but everywhere at once. Directed by David L. Hewitt, it was a low-budget American production released in 1967 that followed four people accidentally trapped in a time machine. Their journey hurled them across history, forcing them to witness humanity's past, future, and ultimate destruction. The film opens with scientists experimenting in a futuristic lab. A mishap flings them first into the prehistoric past, where they struggle against primitive dangers. Soon, they're pushed into the far future, where technological progress has alienated human life. Finally, they arrive at a bleak vision of Earth's end, stripped of civilization and overrun by chaos. Unlike big-budget contemporaries, Journey to the Center of Time offered no comfort. Its conclusion suggested that progress wasn't guaranteed. Humanity could just as easily vanish into oblivion. What the film lacked in polish, it made up for in ambition. Its effects were crude, cardboard sets, stock footage, and matte paintings, but the sheer scope of its journey left a mark. By spanning the entire spectrum of time, it suggested that human beings were fragile passengers in forces far beyond their control. Though dismissed as camp on release, it became a cult staple, resurfacing on late-night TV and later on digital platforms. Fans discovered that beneath the shaky production was a story that asked haunting questions. If we could see every chapter of human history, would we change anything, or would we realize it was never in our hands at all? Beneath the Planet of the Apes, 1970. Following the success of Planet of the Apes, the 1970 sequel, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, pushed the franchise into darker, more apocalyptic territory. Time travel lingered in the background, astronauts once again stumbling into Earth's ruined future. But this time, the journey was less about discovery and more about annihilation. James Franciscus stars as Brent, another astronaut searching for Taylor Charlton Heston. His path leads him underground into the ruins of New York, where he discovers a bizarre race of mutant humans worshipping a doomsday weapon. It was a grotesque twist. Not only had humanity destroyed itself, but its survivors clung to madness, revering the very bomb that doomed them. The film ended with one of the bleakest finales in mainstream cinema. In a final act of desperation, the bomb is detonated, wiping Earth from existence. No reset, no survival, just obliteration. For 1970 audiences, still reeling from nuclear fear, this was a gut punch unlike anything Hollywood had delivered. Critics were divided, some called it too grim, others hailed its audacity. But its impact was undeniable. By embracing destruction instead of hope, Beneath redefined what a sci-fi sequel could be. Time travel wasn't salvation. It was the road to humanity's final mistake. Future World, 1976. After Westworld shocked audiences in 1973 with its robotic rebellion, MGM returned with Future World in 1976, a sequel that used futuristic themes to twist perceptions of time and identity. Set in the same high-tech amusement park, the story follows journalists who uncover a sinister corporate plot. Instead of merely entertaining guests, Delos now creates robot duplicates of powerful figures, clones meant to replace them and control the future. While not literal time travel, the film played with the concept of simulated futures. The park offered visions of tomorrow, fabricated realities that blurred the line between experience and illusion. In its way, Future World bent time by showing how corporations could engineer destiny, replacing authenticity with artificial continuity. The production was sleek and stylish, with sprawling sets and unsettling imagery, including dreamlike sequences where robots and humans were indistinguishable. Peter Fonda and Blythe Danner led the cast, uncovering the conspiracy with the tension of a paranoid thriller. Though overshadowed by its predecessor, Future World anticipated themes that would dominate sci-fi decades later: identity theft, manufactured reality, and futures controlled by corporations. It didn't need a time machine to warn audiences. It showed that the future could be stolen before it even arrived. Time After Time, 1979. Few films blended historical fiction and science fiction as brilliantly as Time After Time. Released in 1979, it imagined H.G. Wells himself inventing a working time machine, only to have it stolen by Jack the Ripper. The chase propels both men into modern-day San Francisco, where Wells must stop the killer loose in the future he only imagined. Directed by Nicholas Meyer, the film balanced thrilling suspense with genuine heart. Malcolm McDowell played Wells as an idealist, shocked by the violence of the 20th century, while David Warner gave Jack the Ripper a chilling intelligence. Their cat-and-mouse game unfolded against a cityscape that felt both vibrant and dangerous, as if the present itself were another alien world. What set the film apart was its emotional core. Amid the suspense, Wells falls in love with a modern woman, Mary Steenburgen, giving the story a warmth absent in most time travel tales. It asked not just whether one could survive the future, but whether one could belong in it. Critically acclaimed, Time After Time showed that time travel could be more than spectacle. It could be character-driven, romantic, and terrifying all at once. It remains one of the smartest, most overlooked gems of its era. Beyond the Time Barrier, 1960. Released at the dawn of the decade, Beyond the Time Barrier set the tone for America's entire wave of time travel cinema in the 1960s and 70s. Directed by Edgar G. Ulmer, the master of making miracles out of tiny budgets, it told the story of a test pilot who accidentally breaks the time barrier during a supersonic flight. Instead of returning safely, he crash lands decades in the future into a world scarred by nuclear catastrophe. What he finds is chilling. Humanity has retreated into an underground fortress ruled by sterile survivors who cannot reproduce. Their civilization is decaying, and their only hope is to use the pilot's fresh biology to renew their doomed species. What begins as a story of accidental discovery turns into a nightmare of captivity, betrayal, and dystopia. Ulmer, who had directed cult classics like Detour, shot the film in just 2 weeks on reused sets, yet managed to conjure a future that felt hauntingly real. The stark architecture, eerie silence, and hopeless atmosphere mirrored Cold War anxieties about radiation, overpopulation, and the fragility of human progress. The ending was a gut punch. When the pilot finally returns to his own time, he has aged decades, his body ravaged by exposure to the future's decay. His testimony is dismissed, leaving him a broken man, proof that even if we could leap across time, the knowledge might destroy us. Though overlooked in its day, Beyond the Time Barrier has become a cult classic, resurfacing through public domain releases and late-night TV. It wasn't about spectacle, it was about fear. In just 75 minutes, it captured the dread of an era obsessed with survival and left audiences with a sobering message. Sometimes, the future isn't worth visiting. Time travel in the 1960s and 70s wasn't polished or predictable, it was dangerous, messy, and visionary. These films dared to ask not just where we were going, but whether we'd survive getting there. From bleak futures to shattered pasts, they left audiences with more questions than answers. Which of these still bends your mind today? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into forgotten cinema. After all, time never waits, but movies like these make sure we never forget.